What is something your neighbor did that you couldn't believe? 1. Just before last Christmas, I was hit by a car and broke my pelvis and leg. I was 7 months pregnant at the time. I didn't really know my neighbors that well, but I had spoken to them a couple times and thought they were nice enough. 2 months of barely being able to do anything went by and finally I delivered my son by C-section. The day after I brought him home, we were hit by an intense blizzard. I think it dropped 1.5 feet before dark. We didn't have anywhere to go, and I was snuggled up with my lovely baby, so we didn't bother to shovel the driveway. As we were cleaning up after dinner, we heard a weird crunching noise outside. They were shoveling our driveway. They didn't have a snowblower. It was freezing brass monkeys out, and they'd already spent a good amount of time shoveling their own driveways. But my neighbors on both sides teamed up and shoveled us out because they wanted us to be able to get out if we needed to. They shoveled a couple times each over the course of the week. I never asked, but they did it anyway. I couldn't believe that they would go out of their ways to help me like that, especially since I barely knew them. We brought them cookies to say thank you. 2. 12 years ago I came home to find the deck to my back door was missing. Later I noticed my next door neighbor was burning old lumber in his backyard. He laughed as he told me he hated my old deck. He then left in his truck. The next day I came home to a new deck and a note. He had gotten the lumber from a job site where he was tasked with removing the existing decks and walkways that were almost brand new. The deck was twice the size of the one he removed. 3. I moved into my boyfriend's house a month after he bought it, sometime in February. He was working in New York at the time, so he would be gone all week and I would be home alone. It was hard for me to adjust to the drive to work in the morning. Before it would take me 15 minutes to get to work, now 45. So, I woke up one morning and realized it snowed. We had a long driveway going to a very main road. My boyfriend was in New York and I had no time to shovel. So I got in my 2014 black VW Beetle and sent it down the driveway in reverse. That's when I hit this hunk of snow and was stuck halfway in my driveway and halfway in the main road. I had stopped traffic for the longest 2 minutes of my life. Tires spinning. In reverse then drive then reverse then drive. I was insanely embarrassed. About a week later we had another storm and at 7 a.m. I hear a snowblower and was a little confused. I run out to see some guy snow blowing our driveway. He and his wife are retired teachers who live across the street. He saw me struggling the other day and figured he could come help me out. It was a very warm welcome. 4. My folks owned the house next door and they had rented it to many people over the decades. One couple was Dallas and Anna. They lived there with their 2 boys. Dallas confided in Dad that they were looking to buy a house. Dad offered to sell them the house they were living in. He offered it to them well below market value. He offered to finance it for them far below market rates. Dallas was no fool and jumped all over it. I asked Dad why he offered them such a deal. Money comes and goes, but good neighbors are better than gold. Now, the answer to the question. A few years later Mom and Dad returned from vacation. Their front porch, which had been sagging, was replaced with a brand new one. Dallas had built it while they were gone. The folks thanked him and he was a bit embarrassed. Nothing more was ever said. Dallas and Anna first rented the house about 1970. Dad died 1999. We lost Mom in 2008. Dallas and Anna are still in the old house. 5. I had a not so great neighbor at one time. He thought he was God's gift to the world, even though he did not believe in God. Everything was about him. Out of the many things he did that surprised me, that I would not believe someone would consciously do. The one item that sticks out in my mind is when he had a house fire. Being next door, we heard his fire alarms go off. My brother and I raced over to his house, and both he and his wife were on their front lawn. They said there was a fire upstairs, and they just ran out when the alarms went off. We asked where his children were, and they told us they were upstairs sleeping. Both my brother and I ran into the house and ran up the stairs. There was smoke, but no flames we could see. We yelled for the children, and they answered and came running out of their bedrooms to us. We grabbed them and ran out the front door. When I asked their parents why they did not try and save the children, they looked baffled and said there was a fire and they just got out. They had no thought about their 2 children, about 4 and 6 years old. None. They were shocked at what we did, and the only thing they could think of saying was, "Why would you do that to save our children? We would never try and save you if your house was on fire." After all the selfish acts my neighbor had committed, this one sealed in my mind that I could not trust them to do anything that was not in their best interest. As a person, I found the whole event to be unbelievable. 6. I was tearing down my old house and building a new house. I got some outrageous estimates for tearing it down. I live 80 kilometers from the nearest waste transfer station that would take this kind of material, so the hauling was expensive. It was surrounded by trees that I wanted to keep, so I couldn't burn it down. I was talking to a neighbor about how much it cost to tear it down, but that looked like my only option. He talked to my other neighbors, and then on my birthday, the whole neighborhood showed up and helped tear down the house. One guy brought over a camper trailer for me to stay in during construction. One guy worked construction and brought out a 40-foot dumpster container for the waste. We kept a fire like a large bonfire going, small enough to not be a threat, but big enough to burn a lot of tinder dry 80-year-old wood. We filled the dumpster with the crushed shingled roof, windows, hot water heater, insulation, and kept burning as much wood as the fire would take. One neighbor brought over a bobcat to pack everything into the dumpster. Others had sawzalls, cutting the walls into manageable chunks. My wife was BB-ching up a storm. One neighbor who was disabled brought over 10 pizzas for the crew. Others hooked their winches to the walls and brought it down. Some people hauled stuff away, my refrigerator became someone's beer fridge, etc. One neighbor stored all my furniture in his garage. One neighbor let me plug an extension cord into her house, so we didn't overload the little generator I had. Another neighbor's let me in his bigger generator. It took one day, a lot of burgers and pizzas, and my neighbors had saved me a small fortune. Would your neighbors do this for you? I couldn't believe my neighbors would do it for me. 7. When I was 10 months, pregnant with my first child and finally had decent contractions, my husband, a writer, said he was too busy to take me to the hospital. My neighbor Maria had said if there's anything I can do, so I went next door and asked. She delivered me to the women's hospital and took her leave. I am eternally grateful to her. Years later, after her younger daughter, Cheryl, had died of meningitis on Christmas Day, I met her older daughter, Dawn, on the street. She confessed to me that she felt the wrong daughter had died, and that she was considering suicide. I extended my lunch by an hour or two to keep talking with her until she acknowledged that her parents would be devastated by losing their only remaining daughter and that she could comfort them and remember her sister by having a happy life. When I finally left my jerk husband, I lost touch with Maria, and apart from that chance meeting with Dawn, I never saw any of the family again, but still remember Therm fondly.